Is it nature or nurture that largely determines how a person's life will turn out? The most logical answer is that it's a combination of both. Each of them play a significant role in forming our personality and our psyche, but is one more dominant than the other? Can nature supersede nurture, or vice versa? Can a person be born evil, regardless of how they're treated? So many questions regarding this age-old debate. Today I'm going to talk about serial killer Todd Kolhepp and the atrocities that he committed over the years. What motivated him to kill 7 people? What made him choose the victims that he did, or was it all done on random impulse? In order to gain insight into what made him tick, I suppose a good place to start would be his childhood. They don't call them the formative years for nothing. Looking at this photograph, he appears to be about 2 years old. He's practically beaming in the arms of a seemingly doting mother. How could anyone have predicted that this adorable little boy would one day take the lives of numerous people? He would become a wolf who would masquerade around in sheep's clothing. Though his mother found it very hard to accept her son's title of serial killer, she only had to think back to see that he demonstrated significant warning signs ever since his childhood, ultimately leading him on the path to murder. Todd Samsel was born in Florida on March 7, 1971. After his parents split up when he was just 2, he didn't hear from his father for the next 8 years. When he was 3 years old, his mother remarried, and Todd took his stepfather's last name of Kohlhepp. At a young age, Todd exhibited serious anger problems. By preschool and kindergarten, he was destroying things in class and was often cruel to other kids when he didn't get his way or what he wanted. This behavior would only continue to escalate as he grew. By age 9, his mother knew she had a real problem on her hands, and she attempted to get him help by seeking counseling for him. Counseling notes stated that he was disturbingly impulsive and he had an unhealthy preoccupation with sexual content. Worse yet, he had an explosive temper. He was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and he was committed for 3.5 months to a Georgia psychiatric hospital because of his inability to get along with other children and his severe behavior problems. His mother, Reggie Tagg, said that Todd was a very sensitive child, and the only way that he knew how to respond to any type of emotional pain that he may have felt was violence. She recalled an incident that she believed to be one of the first times that he was deeply hurt. One day, his 2 step-siblings were picked up from school, and for whatever reason, Todd was not. It left him feeling very angry and unwanted. Todd was never fond of his stepfather. In fact, he hated him. Todd's behavior was increasingly getting more and more volatile, and his stepfather saw each incident as an opportunity to beat him without exception. He once stabbed a girl in the leg with a pair of scissors because she made him upset. She apparently turned him down when he asked her to go out with him. Another time, he killed a goldfish with bleach because he wanted a gerbil instead. He thought killing it would get him what he wanted faster. He seemed to derive pleasure by hurting creatures who were less capable of defending themselves, once hunting down a dog with a BB gun and shooting it. Todd would often say that he wanted to live with his biological father, even though he had virtually no relationship with him. His mother would often placate him in an attempt to keep him from getting violent. On one such incident, after being told by his mother that he couldn't live with his father, he exploded in a rage and destroyed all of the brand new bedroom furniture that she had just bought him with a claw hammer. He even threatened to kill her. She had become so fearful of him that she began to lock his bedroom door at night. She even locked her own bedroom door just to feel safe. By 1983, when he was 12 years old, his mother couldn't handle him any longer. She had endured enough of his abusive behavior, so she finally relented and sent him to live with his biological father. But his behavior did not improve with this move. It only became worse. Living with his father, he developed an appreciation in collecting weapons. His father would sometimes show him how to make bombs and blow things up. The act of destroying anything greatly appealed to Todd. If Todd had hoped to fill the large void that his father's absence had left in his life, now that he was living with him, it only served to disappoint him. His father was both verbally and physically abusive towards Todd. His father once said that the only emotion that his son was capable of expressing was anger. He would often leave Todd on his own for days, sometimes for more than a week at a time, going off with different girlfriends. Needless to say, their relationship deteriorated rather quickly. Todd would commit his first serious violent crime at the age of 15. On November 12, 1986, Todd lured a 14-year-old neighbor girl back to his father's house. Once there, he bound and gagged her, then he violently raped her. He held the gun to her head the entire time he was raping her and even cocked it once to stop her from resisting. Afterwards, he casually walked her home while threatening to kill her younger siblings if she told anyone. Of course, the police were notified and Todd was arrested immediately. He claimed that he did what he did because he was was angry at his father. He told a probation officer when he was questioned about the crime that he wasn't sure why he raped the girl, but it could have been an act of rebellion because his father was out of town. Todd said he was upset with the girl because she had a crush on his friend, but was only interested in friendship with him. Due to the brutality of the crime, he was tried as an adult. The courts could see what a danger he posed to society. According to a psychological evaluation, Todd described his attitude towards himself as negative. He would repeatedly ask himself, "Why do I do things like this?" He saw himself as a bad person. He said he felt bad because he feels that he can hurt people. A pre-sentencing probation officer would write, quote, "It would appear that his behavior has been progressively worsening, and now it has escalated to the point where he has sexually assaulted an innocent child. One can only speculate as to where the defendant's behavior will lead. It is in this writer's opinion that it is the type of individual, one with little or no conscience, who presents the greatest risk to the community," end quote. Unbelievably, for whatever reason, Todd was offered a plea deal. If he pled guilty to kidnapping, the courts agreed to drop the sexual assault charge. And with that, Todd was sentenced to 15 years in prison. And even though the sexual assault charge was dropped, he would have to register as a sex offender upon release. For the most part, he did his time without getting into major trouble. While in prison, he earned a bachelor's degree in computer science. After serving 14 years, he was released in August of 2001. He moved to South Carolina, where his mother was living at the time. He found work as a graphic designer and also started attending college. And in 2008, he earned a second bachelor degree. Even though he was a registered sex offender, he was able to get his real estate license. When questioned about his felony charge of kidnapping, he completely lied about the nature of the crime, and he was so convincing that they actually gave him the license. Soon after, he started up his own real estate firm, and in a very short amount of time, he employed dozens of people. His family was pretty happy because Todd was finally making a change for the better in his life. He owned his own business and he was making good money. That once troubled kid seemed to have turned into a successful adult. Some people who knew Todd spoke highly of him, saying he was a professional guy, very dependable and smart. Some, however, were left with a different impression. A few co-workers stated that Todd found it entertaining to watch pornographic videos in front of them. More than one female real estate client stated that he would inject sexual innuendos into regular conversation, making for some very awkward moments. Some people described him as angry and condescending. A business partner of his described him as weird, as he would often speak about knowing where people lived. Anyone who knew Todd knew that he was obsessed with guns, as he spoke about them and his collection often. He had purchased a 95-acre lot of land, and neighbors would report hearing hundreds of gunshots coming from his property at night. A waitress at a Waffle House that Todd frequented became so uncomfortable around him that the male cook had to start taking his orders. Sadly, it would be one of these waitresses from this Waffle House that would later become his victim. All in all, even with his weird quirks, he was doing pretty good. Some people liked him and some people didn't, just as it is for anyone. But prison had not reformed him by any stretch of the word. He spent many of those years harboring lots of hate and anger. He felt as if the world owed him something. Just 2 years after being released from prison, he would release that rage onto 4 unsuspecting victims. While trying to maintain that veneer of normality, he let his mask slip. On November 6, 2003, he committed a quadruple murder at a SuperBike motorsport motorcycle shop. He gunned 4 people down in cold blood. The victims were the owner of the store, Scott Ponder, age 30, the service manager, which was Brian Lucas, age 29, the mechanic, Chris Sherbert, age 26, and the shop's bookkeeper and mother to the owner, Beverly Guy, age 52. Todd would later state that the reason he killed them was that he had purchased a bike from this shop and he had trouble mounting it, so he wanted to return it or possibly switch it out with something smaller. The employees of the motorcycle shop supposedly laughed at him and made him feel embarrassed for not knowing how to ride. It was most likely done in a lighthearted fashion, as he had been a regular customer and they had had some rapport with him, but Todd was incensed by it. He was so angry at whatever comments they had made to him, he would return just 2 days later to exact his revenge. He waited until the coast was clear and no customers were in the store. Then he systematically gunned them down one by one. The SuperBike murders went unsolved for over 13 years, and even though Todd was on their customer list, he was never questioned. After years of investigation, the police were at a standstill and the case was cold. They most likely would have never solved these murders without Todd's confession confession years later. Todd would continue to live his life as though nothing happened, but just 12 years later, that evil inside him would reemerge. On December 19th, 2015, a young married couple, 29-year-old Johnny Coxey and 25-year-old Megan Coxey, disappeared. Megan's mother would report the two missing on December 22nd. Megan had met Todd Kolhepp sometime before while working at the Waffle House. It's unclear if she had known about his previous disturbing behavior with the one waitress or not. Megan and Johnny had been down on their luck, sleeping rough, and had little to no income. They even had a child taken from them by CPS. On that cold day of December 19th, Todd saw the two of them out panhandling, so he drove up and he offered them some work. On his recently purchased 95-acre lot of land, he needed help in terms of manual labor such as clearing areas and trash removal. Megan and Johnny were elated at the chance to make some real money, so of course they agreed. The two of them got into his car and he drove them out to his property. As soon as the couple exited his car, he shot Johnny twice in the chest. To make sure that he was dead, he put another round through his spinal column. Todd would later claim that Johnny had pulled a knife out, attempting to rob him, and that's why he killed him. Afterwards, he ordered Megan at gunpoint to get into a metal shipping container that he had on the property. He was using this container to store his weapons and tools, as well as a few ATVs. For approximately a week, he held her hostage, sexually assaulting her many times. He would later tell investigators on one hand he really wanted to kill her, but on the other hand he wanted to save her. Todd said that he bought Megan cigarettes and pizza and even her favorite pop to keep her happy. He told Megan that he was going to let her go. He would give her $4,000 and he would drop her off in Tennessee. Megan thanked him several times, believing that he would actually set her free. Todd claimed that he didn't take her to Tennessee because the weather had gotten bad, and he couldn't figure out a way to explain his absence to his current girlfriend, so he didn't take her. After several days, Megan must have sensed that he was lying and that he had no intention of letting her go. Todd said that she became destructive. He said that she destroyed his gun rack and she broke a fan, and she even set the pillows and blankets that he had bought her on fire, and that's when he decided that he would kill her. She was becoming far too difficult to control and he didn't want to deal with it. Todd said that for 2 days she was really happy, believing that he was going to let her go, but then her behavior became really bad. He believed that she had a chemical imbalance or mental illness. He quoted, "She was behaving like a caged animal, so I put a bullet in the back of her head." He said that he walked her out of the container, and before she even knew what was happening, he shot her. He buried both Megan and Johnny on his large property. Police had no leads in terms of finding the couple, and there were no indications that foul play was involved in their disappearance. After all, they were adults, and they had the right to disappear if they wanted to. Oddly enough, Todd had a relationship with a woman during this time. The woman was married, and she reportedly had a 10-year-long affair with Todd. That arrangement probably suited him just fine, as he could come and go as he pleased, and she wouldn't be around enough to know what he did in his private time. So he was able to keep this double life of his secret from her. Todd really liked the idea of having a sex slave. Taking advantage of a helpless woman whenever he felt the urge excited him. He started to devise a plan to obtain sex slave number 2. He had to wait a while though after the murders to ensure that the police weren't after him, but after 8 months, he could hold out no more. Todd knew a woman named Kayla Brown. She was 30 years old and he had met her through an ex-boyfriend of hers. Sometime in August of 2016, he started chatting with her through Facebook, discussing his need for help with cleaning his property. She had cleaned several properties for him in the past, so he asked her if she was up to doing it again. Kayla took him up on his offer, asking if her boyfriend, Charles Carver, age 32, could come along to help. Todd didn't have an issue with this. In fact, he probably preferred it that way because Charles would have known where Kayla was going, so it was best not to have someone out there who could potentially point a finger at him when she went missing. On August 31st, 2016, Todd would put his plan into action. He met Kayla and Charles on the outskirts of his property. There, they got into his car to go further in. Todd would recount that he got annoyed with the two of them because they started bickering in his car. He shot Charles 3 times in his chest as soon as he exited the vehicle, killing him. Todd then grabbed Kayla from behind, he forced her to the ground, and he handcuffed her. He then apologized to Kayla, telling her that he was sorry about Charlie, but he had to do it in order for her to know that he was serious. He wrapped Charlie's body up in a blue tarp and he buried him on the property. He said that he doused the entire area with red pepper so that cadaver dogs would not be able to smell him. In a strange attempt to make her feel better, he told her that Charlie didn't feel anything when he died because of the type of gun he used on him. Todd hid Charlie's car somewhere deep into the property. He spray painted the car brown so that it would blend in with its surroundings. He then loaded the car with dog food and and kept the windows down so that animals would get in and tear it up to the point where there would be no evidence left. Once he had Kayla in the metal shipping container, he put one set of cuffs around her ankle and a chain around her neck, each of which were bolted to the wall. Most of the time, she had to sit in an upright position due to the way that she was chained. Every day between 1 and 3 p.m., Todd would remove those chains and take her to his house that was also on the property. There, he would allow her to eat, she could take a bath if she wanted, and then he would sexually assault her. When done, she would go right back to the container. He would always return between 5 and 7 p.m. to do the same thing, feed and assault. Sadly, this would become her daily routine over the next 9 weeks. One thing that Todd was adamant about was that he was not a rapist, and that she didn't have to do anything sexual with him if she did not want to. Obviously, there would be some fine print to this seemingly good news. If Kayla didn't perform the sexual acts that he desired, he would fail to see a use in keeping her around. He was not trying to be subtle, and the message was loud and clear. Over the next 9 weeks, Todd would tell her that he was a hitman for the government. They had been supposedly paying him to kill people for years. He thoroughly enjoyed bragging about his exploits as a serial killer. His goal was to kill more people to get his body count in the 3 digits. I guess at that time, it was only in the high 2 digits. It's not uncommon for serial killers to inflate their numbers. He discussed with her many of the details surrounding the SuperBike murders. He would often remind Kayla that he would never see jail time for any of this, and if the police inquired, that he would make sure that they knew that she was responsible for all of it. He was the one in power, he had the money, and they would believe him over her. He would give her a nickname, calling her his kitten. He wanted to get her comfortable in handling his guns, unloaded of course. He was going to teach Kayla to be like him. He wanted her to kill people. He said that over time, she would come to accept being with him. He spoke of Stockholm Syndrome and how she would love him once it kicked in for her. His end game was to make Kayla his partner in crime, or at least that's what he wanted her to believe. 9 weeks after she was taken hostage by Todd, she was finally rescued on November 3rd. It took police time to put all the pieces together to locate her. They had to get warrants to access both her and Charlie's Facebook page, and they also had to get warrants for both of their phone records. And these things don't happen immediately. It took them weeks to actually get these records. Through her Facebook page, they would learn that her and Charlie were supposed to be working on Todd's property the day that they disappeared. They could see that Kayla's cell phone was pinging from Todd's property, bouncing off of nearby towers for 2 days after she and Charlie went missing. When police finally gained legal access to his 95-acre property, it didn't take them long to locate Kayla. Once they were close to the shipping container, they could hear Kayla screaming from inside and banging on the walls. They had to use a saw to cut the locks to get the door open, and when they did, everyone could see that she was chained up like a dog. She was truly lucky to be alive. Who knows what Todd had planned to do with her? Todd was at his house the day that they rescued Kayla. He initially pretended that he didn't know there was a woman being held on his property. The police didn't buy his story, of course, and they arrested him. Kayla would tell the police about the people he admitted to killing, and that she actually witnessed him killing Charlie. Soon after, they would find his body, as well as Megan and Johnny's, buried on his property. Once at the police station, Todd dropped the act and would confess to everything except for one major thing. He would not confess to raping Kayla. He said that the sex between them was consensual and that she had even initiated it at times. What Todd failed to understand is that Kayla was doing whatever she had to do to save her life. So if that meant that she had to pretend to enjoy doing those things with him, that's what she had to do. Todd had actually convinced himself that Kayla wanted to be with him. I'll put the links to his interrogation videos down in the description box so that you can watch them whenever you have the time. They are truly mind-boggling to watch, but also quite entertaining. If you're wondering why Todd killed Megan and not Kayla, that answer is very simple. Kayla was cooperative with him. She didn't fight, she didn't resist, she did what he wanted her to do. And she said what she needed to say to keep him happy with her. Todd was convicted of 7 counts of murder, 3 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of first-degree criminal sexual assault. And for that, he received 7 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus 60 years. I would say that Todd Kolhepp is definitely an evil man. He lacks remorse and he's even proud about the horrible things that he's done to others. He's a sociopath. And that is the end of this video. There are so many details surrounding this case, and it literally took me a lot of time to research it to get the information I needed to make this video. I included all of the important details about Todd. Now, of course, there are minor things that I did not add into this video. One of them was that he would leave crazy reviews reviews on Amazon about different items that he purchased to help him with his crimes. And another thing was he had access to both Kayla and Charlie's phones, so he started posting things on their Facebook pretending to be them, but obviously their family was well aware it was not them, and he actually started being very rude and kind of fighting with them a little bit. You can look those things up easily on YouTube if you want to know more about it, but I thought this video was long enough as it was. If you've watched the entire thing, I want to thank you so very much. It really means a lot to me. I worked really hard on this video and it took me many hours to put it together. I would love to know what you thought of this case, so please leave a comment letting me know. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to my channel to help me grow. Definitely could use a lot more subscribers. If there's a case that you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comment section. I love to take requests. Anyhow, thank you once again for watching, and remember, stay safe out there, people.